Hello, I'm Emma Hammett from First Aid for Life and onlinefirstaid.com. Today I'm going to talk to you about head injuries, and in particular about head injuries that occur whilst doing sports and on the sports field. I mean, much of the advice is the same if head injuries occur anywhere, but it's particularly important in sports because the temptation is for the person to be allowed to go back onto the sports field and continue to play. And repeated head injuries can cause long-term damage. So the Scottish FA have recently announced that they are looking to ban under 12s heading the ball in practice. And that is because they've looked at various studies with professional footballers and found that there is an increasing incidence of professional footballers suffering from dementia and from associated head trauma type brain damage, basically, resulting, they think, from continuous bangs on the head. I mean, it is common sense. We don't let our children bang their heads against anything else. So why should we be encouraging them to head a ball repeatedly during a practice? Now, heading the ball in a game is actually different because it's not headed, you're not heading it as often as that repeated practice. And what happens with a head injury is that your brain is in a box and injuries swell. All injuries swell no matter where they are. So if your brain is in a box and it is injured, it will swell and it will push against other bits of your brain and against your spinal cord. And also in that bang where they're hit, your brain will reverberate within your skull and it can rip and tear blood vessels. So you get bleeding in the brain and that swelling and the associated compression that can occur. Now, even in heading a ball type injury, which is a very minor head injury, that repetition is thought to be causing the damage. So in that repetition, you might have minor damage, but that swelling carries on. And in repeatedly hitting, it is thought that causes long-term consequences. So really important that if somebody is injured during a game, that they have a head injury, that they are taken off and allowed to recover. So you look for any obvious signs of concussion. If they're looking a bit dazed, if they're having a bit of memory recall, bit spaced. Not all concussions and head injuries are knocked out. In fact, it's a rarity for somebody to be knocked out, or not a rarity, but it's a minority of cases of concussion where somebody is actually knocked unconscious from the head injury. So make sure that the game, that everybody is taking it seriously, that they understand the consequence of head injuries and that people are taken off. If it is a serious head injury, then if you think head injury, think spinal injury. So if it is a serious head injury, then play should be stopped. That person should be kept where they are and they should be supported. I've got more stuff on my site about this, but you're supporting the head and neck, hard to show on my own. Fingers splayed so that they can still hear you, and supporting the head and neck like that, lying down behind them and encouraging them to stay as still as they can. Keep them warm and dry and get the emergency services to you. If that person is conscious, you're keeping them still and talking to them and keeping them calm. The game can move somewhere else. If that person is unconscious and breathing, they will need to be very carefully rolled into the recovery position. If they are unconscious and not breathing, then you need to be doing CPR. Now, it would not be very many cases that would happen, but head injuries happen during games. Now, the FA has also introduced, and the rugby clubs as well, have introduced the gradual return to play, which is a system which schools and clubs are signing up to that is a structure to prevent that repeated serious head trauma that can occur. So if it's been identified that someone has had a concussion during play, they are taken off, and then they're encouraged to rest and recuperate, and that means no screen time, not too much reading, just resting your brain. And then as symptoms subside, they're gradually allowed to start doing a bit more. And they're not allowed to play again until they've been assessed by a doctor. And then there are set time periods, depending on their age, at which they can return to play. And there are far more details about that in the attached article below, or in some of the articles on my website. So I hope you found that useful. That's Emma Hammett from First Aid for Life and onlinefirstaid.com.